I thought for today's little chat, I would just remind ourselves, sometimes it's worth going back and just reminding and stating the bleeding obvious because it can be very easy to forget. Just remind ourselves why we are in the mess, why the country and the world is in the mess that it's in. We just need to sort of remind ourselves and go back to basics, whilst we also then look for solutions on how we can get out of this idiotic state. And of course, we're in this nonsense because we've been fed this single lie, this myth, this rubbish that all the troubles that are coming down at us that we've been talking about on my channel and other channels, freedom fighters, truth sayers and so on, have been talking about, all because of this one myth, which is still being portrayed as if it is the most important thing. And that, of course, is that the planet is warming up to such a state that there is a catastrophe happening, man-made global warming. And we've got to get this into our head that this, although the planet is warming, it is warming, and the IPCC have changed their reporting now, and they've admitted that it's only 1.5 degrees centigrade, 1.5 degrees centigrade over this century, over 100 years, or at least 80 years until the end of the century. 1.5. That doesn't mean 1.5 degrees is not the difference between me stepping outside on, say, 18 degrees centigrade outside and then it being 19 degrees. Just because of that, the oceans have suddenly risen and my house is awash in water, or that the trees in the park have suddenly spontaneously combusted and have gone into flames. That doesn't happen. Not on 1.5 degrees of heat over 80 years. This is a complete and utter myth, and we've got to get back to that very basic point that all the hardships and the nonsense that's being thrown down at us is in the name of saving the planet. This is what they keep telling us at the WEF. Everything's got to be sustainable, you know, diversity, all these mealy-mouthed words, because they're trying to save the planet and make sure everything's going to be all right. Well, it's rubbish. It's complete and utter total rubbish. Now, I'm indebted to one of my viewers, Ian, he knows who he is, who sent me an email. It looks like he sent it in the dead of night, but anyway. And there's just a couple of points I pulled out of that because I thought they were worth just reminding ourselves. So he tells me that he was watching a presentation with the CEO of a company called Power Assets, I think in China somewhere, or Hong Kong, actually. He's a major shareholder of a Hong Kong firm on Hong Kong Electric. And this bloke, this CEO, major shareholder, says that one electric vehicle, you know, we've all been told we've got to go to these electric vehicles. One EV, electric vehicle, requires the same power consumption as 3 average households. Can you imagine it? So you're charging up your car and you're using all the power in that car, and that is the equivalent to 3 households who are watching the television and hoovering the carpet and, you know, hair dryers, the fridge, all the electric thing, all of that. Now, I don't know how true that is, but that's what he claims. Seems possible. That's a lot of power. That is a lot of power that's coming in just to charge a single electronic vehicle. Utility companies, Ian sent to me, he says, will now struggle because of the supply. The necessary power will be increased for draining out the power to charge these blooming cars if we all moved over to it. Now, we all know, don't we? I mean, we're all clever people. My viewers, you lot, are all clever people. You're not dunces. We've all worked this out, have we not? That actually this is unfeasible. That if you got rid of all diesel and petrol cars and we all switched over to these battery-run vehicles, we all know that that's impossible. There's not enough of the necessary stuff to power all the batteries, and there's not enough going into the grid to power the cars in the first place? And do we really want to send children down these mines to get all these lithium and various special metals that are needed in the batteries in the first place? Do we? It's not, I don't feel comfortable ethically, morally, about the slavery that's going on in that. And we hear so much about slavery and what happened in the past, you know, the transatlantic slave times. We all hear about how all that, and reparations have got to be paid to families who've got no connection anymore with their well, they've got a connection being ancestors, but they're not enslaved now, and yet somehow we've got to pay for that. But nobody wants to pay for the earlier slaves from when British people were whipped away from the shore. Nobody, no, we're not talking about that. So we hear about these reparations, and we all want to do that, but we still got slavery going on in this country, and then everyone's going, oh, well, no, that's fine. Send the kids down the mines because we've got to save the planet. I'm not going down the mine. Oh, no, no, I'll sit on my sofa and drive an electric car and wave everyone and show everybody how moral I am. Just send the kids down there in the poor countries, let them do all the work. I'm not happy personally with that. I think that stinks. And anybody who is happy with that, they should be put up against the wall and shot, if you ask me. So more of these points here. 70% of electric vehicles at the moment, at this point now, are running on, 70% are running on power that's generated by fossil fuels. So, you know, the steel that's gone into making it, the electricity that's actually generating it from the infrastructure of all of it, the wires and everything else that's been put in has been generated by fossil fuels. The irony is so big that you just think, are these people dunderheads? They must be. So much so now, because of the drain on the electricity boards, Switzerland apparently is taking steps to control how many people can charge their vehicles. And California are asking electronic vehicle owners to charge their vehicles at certain times, because if they all do it at the same time, it's going to be too much for the grid. And that's a bit of an imposition, isn't it? Because most people who work usually go to work in the mornings and then they come back at night. So they want to charge their cars at a similar time so they can get to work. Well, if you're suddenly said, no, you have to charge them in the mid-afternoon or only at this time of the day, it's not necessarily going to work in with your work pattern, is it? So that does seem a bit barking. And in Britain, we often see some of these parking meters. So they're not parking meters, electronic meters. Some of them are going down near where I am. And you see these sort of out of order signs because there's just not enough electricity. You're pulling out too much electricity out of the grid. And of course, we're switching the grid to this ridiculous nonsense of, oh yes, it's got to be green, it's got to be wind power. So you've got these massive great turbines going, and then you've got the solar panels all over the place. And of course, we know that these have problems because the wind isn't always blowing and the sun isn't always shining. And so, you know, what are you going to put up with the gap? You're going to use fossil fuels, aren't you? Because what else have you got? Because everyone's trying to sort of go, oh no, we haven't built enough nuclear plants. And yet nuclear these days can be much more smaller and modular. It's a lot safer than it used to be. And they take up less land mass. They take up such a small amount of landmass, and the wind turbines and the solar panels are spread all over our wonderful countryside, taking up, ugly as anything, taking up fields which could be better used to growing food. More on that in a moment. So we have that problem. And now let's just go back to this thing about the reason that the global warming is happening, because we're all told, of course, it's CO2, this gas, CO2, that is, of course, as we know, is only 0.04% of the atmosphere in the atmosphere. You know, it's only, that's how much gas there is. There's much more water vapor and all that. 0.04%. So put that another way, that's 400 parts per million. So it's a very small amount that everyone's got het up about and going, oh. But if you go down to 0.02% of CO2 in the atmosphere, plants die. They are not at their best now, and they will die if you start reducing the CO2. Net zero, stupid idea, because of course the carbon life form that they want to get rid of is us. That's basically what it amounts to. But plants will die, animals can't eat plants, we can't eat plants, we can't eat animals, end of the planet. I mean, it is a suicide mission. It is genocide on the largest scale you could imagine, and we've got to sort of wake up a bit and think, hang on, what are we doing? This is a nonsense. In fact, we need more CO2 in the atmosphere so that plants will grow much better. We know this. We've been banging on about this. What do they put into greenhouses to get tomatoes and stuff to plant? They pump in CO2 because it's plant food. And instead, you've got the ridiculous notion that people are believing and going along with, governments are following because they've been forced to by these WEF nonsense people, that, of course, we've got to reduce all of this because CO2 is bad and we mustn't have it. But we actually need a lot more so that we can have abundance, because they're knocking out farmers. We've seen in the Netherlands how they're trying to close 3,000 farms because they want to build a tri-city and try and herald people in. We know this is nefarious. The cat is out of the bag, and we've got to start taking back responsibility, making these governments, and these particularly the WEF and the Klaus Schwabs and the Bill Gates and all of these, the Tony Blairs and the people who want to turn us into transhumans and put chips into our head, making out that the human in and of itself is not one of the most genius pieces of biological invention that you could possibly have, that man could invent something better than that, better by a chip. We all know how many times computers crash, how systems go wrong, how things cock up. If you were to put that into your head or into your bit of body, you would be mad. We still don't know just how incredible this human body, not just the physical body, but the spiritual body is. We still have not charted how marvellous and the potential of who we are as we are. And people like the WF don't want us to do that. They don't want us to have high vibrations. They don't want us to experiment and learn and develop and have a proper life. They want to control us with the chips and the digital ID and the central bank digital currency and the 15-minute cities and the low carbon, whatever it is, neighbourhood zones. I mean, again, it all comes back to this myth of global warming, which is complete and utter tosh. And we've got to laugh at these people. We've got to laugh at the councillors who want to suggest that this is what we want us to do with the 15-minute cities. We've got to laugh at the government. I don't know why people are voting for the government at all in any shape or form, any form of government. Nobody in government, anybody in that House of Commons, in the Houses of Parliament, in the government, the House of Lords, they're all, that era has gone. That has gone. That's not working. We've seen it's not working. It doesn't matter who you put into power. We know that they're all liars and they're all against us. They're causing terrorism against the people with their ULEZ scheme. I mean, the ULEZ scheme, as I was talking to good old Stan McDonald yesterday on the show we put out, I mean, it's laughable that you can have a scheme in which old cars are exempt from the ULEZ scheme, which is supposed to be getting clean air into London. And so you can have old bangers, old petrol bangers that have blue smoke popping out of the exhaust pipe, that they know don't need a seat belt. You can drive those around perfectly fine. But if your car is about, say, I don't know, relatively modern, and the emissions over a certain point, you can't drive it. And yet the modern cars are much better at sorting out the diesel particulates and the fumes and getting rid of the additional fuel that's not been done through the catalytic converters. We know all of this. This is all possible and it's all there. But no, you can drive an old banger that will pollute everywhere. But we know that's not really what this is all about. It's all about biometrics. It's about tracking people, controlling people, and penalising you through the central bank digital currency. And this is all a nonsense. And we must remind ourselves constantly that all of this is a big myth. It's all a lie. The global warming thing is a hoax and it's rubbish. It all goes back to the people who control the money. And now they're trying to control the food as well. And this is where food is the most important part of our aspect, of our future. They're poisoning the atmosphere with the chemtrails and the whatever. And we can get rid of the pollution. That's going to happen. I think we'll get rid of that, but not just in electric cars. All those the infrastructure of electric cars is a nonsense. We know they're poisoning the food, that appeal stuff that's got trans fats and what have you in it to try and make fruit and veg last longer on the shelves. Why do we need it to last longer? Why do we need it to be transported from the other side of the world? When we know in our hearts, we do know that what we should be doing is eating fresh and local and organic. Food that you can see in the fields near where you live and go, look, that's a lettuce, that's a potato, that's a carrot. That is what they really look like. There's the farmer, and we can see he's not spraying all sorts of stuff. There's the animals. They're not being injected with antibiotics every 10 minutes to sort of make them bigger or produce more yield. All those fields that have got the wind turbines and the solar panels should be putting back into farm. People often say, oh, but organic food, you can't get it as big or as plentiful, the yields are smaller. They say all of these arguments. And I say to them, I said, yeah, that's true. That's absolutely true. But all these products that you talk about that are more plentiful than the yields, they're nutrient poor. There's nothing in it. Why would you eat something that has no vitamins or no nutritional value to you that actually has potentially got all the poisons and the toxins in it? Why would you want to eat plentiful amounts of that rather than a more healthy diet of organic food that is better for you? Why? You know, food, the fundamental thing of man is to grow food to nourish his family, and then they can procreate and so on and so forth and work as a community. And for thousands of years, that's what we've done. We've got it in our notion for some reason in the last 150 years that actually what we should be doing is working extra long hours on things which are really irrelevant to life, not connecting with our community, becoming atomized, getting behind big screens, playing virtual reality games, not engaging with our neighbours, not eating together as a family, teaching our children to be sexual creatures well before the age of 12, 13, you know, they shouldn't even be thinking at that age, well before 18, that we're teaching young kids all this rubbish. We're teaching them so much nonsense of being very egocentric and putting pictures on Instagram and, oh, look at me, and you know, I've got this and I've done this, I've had a nip and tuck and all of this kind of crap. We've got to get back. We've got to get back to a much more holistic and wholesome society in which we trust our neighbours. We speak to our neighbours over the garden gate. We have shared customs and traditions. We have a shared history. We have a community that means something, and that we can coexist with one another in a very healthy environment in which we are responsible for what we do and what our community does, not giving away all of that to a government who turns it on the head and says that they are sovereign, that they can dictate to us. That is wrong. That is totally wrong. We've got to get back to looking after ourselves healthily, eating properly, and relying on each other. And if it means that we need to find another monetary source rather than these central bank digital currencies, which will penalise us with their social credit score and all connected to the myth of global warming, then so be it. We can do that. We are clever people. We are sovereign people, and we can do that. And do you know what? We jolly well will do it.